Hi. For who of you is this your first lecture this term? Yeah? Great. Who for it here is the first time they're in person for a lecture? Couple of people? All right, well, I'll try not to fuck up the experience for you as best I can. I just want to say a big, congrats to those who could be bothered to come here. There's certainly, no, really, I mean, it's the sun is set, frankly, right? Why would you come? It's clear that you care. It's clear that you're trying to get something out of your uni experience, which is very exciting. That's why I'm here, because I want to help give you something out of your uni experience. And if I wasn't clear based on the introduction video or some of the emails that I've sent out, my name's Hayden, and I'm one of about 40 people that are just the best bunch of teaching staff. Not me, but everyone else is in CSE as far as I'm concerned, right? So 1531 is just such a bucket of fun, or can be a bucket of fun in particular. And I know there's a bunch of you sitting around very nervous, being this is a group work course, and group work means scary things, and you probably heard horror stories. I'm sure some of you have that friend that told you about how, the time they did 1531 sent them onto a mental health plan or something like that, and statistically, if you look around the room right now, there's probably about 2 or 3 people who are going to have a really bad time, and we do our absolute best to prevent that. And I can't pretend that it won't happen, but I also don't want to act like it's some big scary thing, because you kind of survey people and everyone's kind of worried. But most students have a pretty good time, and then a chunk have an interesting time where they learn a lot, they learn a little bit about people. And tonight, we are basically just going to be talking a little bit about the course, and then we're going to be talking about Git, which is one of the first topics of the course before we really get into the programming part. Now, the problem with doing stuff hybrid in person is that everything is just a little bit more painful. So some quick examples are we've got people online here that are posting YouTube comments that I'm not going to be reading because I'm looking at all the lovely people here. We also have the fact that this MacBook that I have for work is a different aspect ratio to YouTube as well. So everything, if you're watching this recording later or you're watching it on YouTube, things look a little bit kind of, fuzzy. And just all around it's a little bit harder. So normally this lecture is about 2 hours at home. Tonight I imagine it will just go slightly over. I just told everyone that in advance. But no one wants to be here past 8, so we'll do our best to plow through things. The first thing we're going to jump into is just a little bit of a course overview. This isn't really about the course structure, because you should be familiar with the course structure already. Who hasn't watched the course structure lecture? What's your name, sir? Josh, your head is awfully close to blocking that projector. That's impressive. Good. What do you study, Josh? Mechatronics. Mechatronics. That's really exciting. How many people here study mechatronic engineering? Cool. So, as of 2021, this course became part of the mechatronic engineering degree. So you're actually part of a very new breed of people getting absorbed into this area. So it was Josh, right? Yeah. Okay, I was worried I forgot already. So if you're one of the people like Josh, either at here or at home, it is basically just an exciting time. Because I've seen many, many mechatronics students go through their degrees as well, and they usually finish missing some things that we chatted about in this course. And if you're a comp-sci student, there are so many exciting things that we go through, which we're about to chat through today as well. But before we do that, the name of this course, I'm getting a little sleepy myself. The name of this course is Software Engineering Fundamentals. So the name is somewhat self-explanatory, right? We're going to be learning about the fundamentals of what software engineering is, but what in the world is software engineering? And what's the difference with that and computer science? So again, show of hands, who's studying computer science? Okay, who's studying software engineering? Put your hand up if you think you're studying the better program, right? It's why? If I can pick another Mr. Blue Shirt, Mr. Blue Hoodie, who's, you. Yeah, what's your name?
Toby.
Toby, what are you studying?
Computer science and actuary.
Computer science, okay, so you're smart probably, right? So why do you study computer science and not software engineering?
Computer science is the shorter degree. Software engineering is 2 years.
Software engineering you have to do honors. Computer science is a shorter degree. Okay, I hear that one a lot. Who's studying software engineering here? Again, show of hands, and wants to be scared of what's your name up the front? Nathan. Why do you study software engineering, Nathan?
Because it was the only scholarship co-op offered me,
It was the only scholarship co-op offered you. Excellent. Well, congratulations to Nathan on being on. You did take it, right? Yeah, okay, good. Congratulations. So, like, the difference between these two things is quite minor, but let's take a step back from the degree for a second, because that's kind of boring, and, like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you do. I've never seen it matter in my entire life, really. But let's talk about, like, just the semantics of the name. So computer science is essentially the study of computers, right? It's when you think about, like, what is binary, what is going on with hardware, and, you know, if statements, and just, you could do it in your basement is like a way I think about it, right? So if you go and sit in a room alone with the internet and you just like engage yourself with computers, you're probably engaged in computer science. So you're learning how computers work. Software engineering, on the other hand, is where we focus on, and this is kind of the simple way of describing it, building things for people with people. So if you're building things with people for other people, you're probably engaged in software engineering. So what it does is, like, that split makes a lot of sense. It's like you're learning about computers, which is probably what a lot of you have done in 1511 or 1521. And then when you come here, you're really learning about, now that I know some of this stuff, how do I grab other people and how do we go and do some cool things together? Which can actually be quite difficult. I kind of just described that. The notes have a lot of stuff on them for you to read through, because, like, I generally don't like the idea of you having to listen to my voice to learn things after the first time round, if that makes sense. So if I skip over notes, it's just so you can kind of skim through later. At UNSW, software engineering is literally just an expansion of computer science. Many of you know that because you picked your program. The point to make here is just that it mostly doesn't matter. People do computer science because they want to get out of uni quickly. People do software engineering because they want to spend more time learning. Your life outcomes are pretty heavily dictated by just how hard you work and how smart you are or how much experience you get throughout. So the distinction doesn't matter within this course. If you're a computer science student, just because the course is called Software Engineering Fundamentals does not mean that this course is any less relevant for you as a person. The definition of software engineering and IEEE definition is here. You can read, I hope, so you can read that in your own time. It's very heavy, but if we want to bubble it down to something and say we've got like 10 weeks together, how are we going to have some fun? How are we going to have you walk away feeling like you've learned something? It all comes down to really like 5 key things. So by the end of the course, we want you to be able to extract and understand the problem you're trying to solve. In terms of, like, you know, it's not just about coding. Everything you code has a purpose, and like, what is that purpose, you know? Every app you use, the people who are building it are interested in you, not interested in the code they write. So being able to extract and understand that problem is key. Being able to design and develop code that resists regressions when it changes over time. That basically means that, like, everything in life changes slowly and we need to find ways to stop it getting worse. And you're all familiar with this, if any of you, like, are alive, because if you've ever had like who has a bedroom? Yeah? Concerning, but it's like, if you have a bedroom, you've probably experienced what it's like when everything's neat and tidy, then things slowly start to fall off the shelf and like on the floor, and then there's like dirt under your bed. Things just get worse over time in life, and software is no different. So we have to find ways to essentially mitigate that regression as much as possible, or find ways to stop it getting dirtier, to avoid having to clean it up so often. We want you to make sure that you can write software that's safe, software that doesn't break. A bunch of you are going to go work at big companies like Google, Atlassian, and Canva, where software breaks a lot of the time. The smaller the company, the more it breaks, but no one really cares, right? Because if you've ever used Canva and Canva doesn't work for a few minutes, like, you just come back later, right? And some of you are going to go work in really intense areas of software, in very different fields where you might be, you think of some dramatic example like SpaceX or something, right? Where it's like things need to work. So we're going to learn a little bit about just the principles that underpin that idea of software needing to work. We're going to understand how to make software available on the internet so you can write code that people can actually use. Because that's one thing that kind of sucks about your journey so far is you probably wrote some cool software in, say, 1511, but it just sits on your laptop, right? It's like no fun. How do you like give it to all your friends and family who are going to be so excited to use your silly little assignment? And then we want to work together with people. So that's really at the core of it. I'm just going to skip through a few things tonight because they're all quite self-explanatory. But there's this deeper question of why that I think is so important to touch on, because we talk about what software engineering is, and it's all well and good, but like, why even have this course? Why does it matter? I'm sure you'd figure out how to make software for people, but the really simple explanation I can give is that Every organization, whether it's like a for-profit and not-for-profit, something in the public sector, the private sector, every one of them in reality just doesn't want to waste money, right? You'll never find an organization out there that doesn't want to waste money. And if they're not paying you, if it's some crazy volunteer organization, they don't want to waste your time because they have so many resources with you. So what we're learning about, in the most fundamental sense is how do we write software and approach software in a way that doesn't hurt us later, that doesn't waste time as we go along, right? So in a big sense, it's just kind of, not hurting your future self or your future team. Because big bad things can happen, right? And you see this all the time. Every couple of years there's some kind of hilarious software bug where everything breaks. So do you remember that Facebook thing like a week ago or something where like everyone was like posting on celebrities' Facebook pages or something? Does any of you even use Facebook? Is this a problem I'm starting to have? Who uses Facebook? Okay, we can go with that. That's good. Everything I described before is broken up into these topics, and we're going to kind of quickly touch on them because these are really like what we talked about before with those 5 things was like what we hope you come away with, but these are the topics that every lecture, tutorial, lab, and part of the project you work with will fall into. And a lot of them come back to this fairly simple idea that we'll touch on now and again, which is the software development lifecycle, which is a way of just telling the story of how you build software, right? It's a cycle that, you probably, the most important thing when you look at this cycle is, it's a little bit like, I like to think of it like, what are those cycles? Someone tell me one of those silly cycles from science you did in high school. Water cycle, is that what it's called? The water cycle, it's all kind of the same stuff. They're just these broad concepts that don't tell you exactly how every day and every situation is going to go, but it helps you understand what the general flow of how things work is, right? So the software development lifecycle we have here is like, and we're going to talk through it, so I don't need to talk about it now, but it's made up of just a few key components that tend to come after another, where the first one is like figuring out what you're trying to do and build. Right, so if I say to you tomorrow, we're going to go build an app that helps you figure out where there are free seats on campus, right? Have any of you ever tried to find like a seat somewhere on campus when it's really busy and it's just like there's no seats somewhere you like? And you wander around for a while and wasting your life. So if I said we were going to build an app like that together, we'd have to sit down and say like, what are we trying to do? What are we actually trying to accomplish? Who are the people we're targeting? It's a little bit of planning. You're all kind of familiar with the idea of planning. After that, we have to go and design it. We have to say, well, what is it going to look like? How is it going to be structured? What's the general plan for the software? Can I describe the software in a visual way to help me kind of map out the key components? Then we have to build it. We actually have to code it, which is probably the part you're most familiar with, right? You know how to code, I hope. Has anyone not coded for like a year or more? It's all good. That's a good sign. After we've coded things, we need to generally make sure that they work. It's kind of crappy to build something that doesn't work. That's going to hurt you later on. And then afterwards, we need to figure out how to actually bring it out to people like I mentioned before. So one of the cooler parts about what we do in this course is that you're going to work on something with your team, which you'll kind of find out about tomorrow and the following days. And then you're going to write software for 9 weeks, and hopefully at the end of 9 weeks, you'll actually be able to put something you've done on the internet so that you and your team can use it on the internet together. Not just kind of stuck on your own computer. And then coding together. Teamwork is important. I don't like talking about it because you all kind of get it. It's one of those things. It's like when we're like, we need to be nice to people. And no one in the crowd is ever like, that's a damn good point, right? They're just like, yeah, okay, we're here to learn how to work together. Some of you don't want to, but that's only because you're scared of other people. It's not because you're a miserable person, I hope. And then a kind of interesting part of the course that you could argue is not absolutely core to the philosophy of it is just working with full stack web development. We teach it here because it's convenient, it's fun, and it makes sense, but we'll get you familiar with the basics of essentially building web servers. Because that's frankly, if many of you will graduate from this university and many of you will go and work in software, and more than half the people in this room will be working on web. Probably, because that's nearly how all software is built. So it's really good to kind of get that integral into the process. There's a general thank you. I know that students talk and there's murmurs around. We rewrote this course, the same course, different color, last term. So this is the second term after a rewrite. We've been nailing out a lot of kinks. So you have the benefit of the poor people who suffered for some small problems everywhere last term, so you should be happy with that. We're still naturally going to have teething problems and stuff, so big thank you in advance for any patience you have for that. That means a lot. And then last thing, we have these at the end of every lecture. There's links on the slide, and there's also a QR code for our more phone-based participants. If you'd ever like to leave feedback, you don't have to, though it's really helpful just to get like 10 or 20 people usually leave some feedback, which is really, really nice. There's a few kind of questions that I've kind of seen come up already, which is like, what's recorded, what's online and stuff. The plan currently is to probably have in-person lectures quite sparingly in general. So this is like a bit of a novelty for us all. So for the people, again, who are watching at home, there's going to be a lot more engagement with the live chat, but it's just kind of really difficult here tonight. So we're going to move on to the next part, which is where we actually start talking about things that matter.